Hi Jules, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm giving you guys a tutorial on how I made this flowy 4-tiered maxi skirt. So let's get into it. I am using 45-inch wide cotton batik fabric. For my second and fourth longer tiers, I use 3 yards of this paisley print and I use 2 yards of the pink and 1-inch elastic. When cutting out my tiers, I make sure to keep the fabric on the fold so that everything is neat and even. For tier 1, you're going to take your waist measurement and multiply that by 1.5 inches to get your length. For the width, you're going to take however long you want the skirt to be, divide that by 4 and add your seam allowance. I'm using 1/2 inch seam allowance and I added an extra inch for my waistband casing. For tier 2, you multiply the length of tier 1 by 1.5 inches and that is your new length. For the width, it's the same as tier 1, but you only add 1 inch seam allowance, so 1/2 inch on the top and the bottom. To get the width of tier 3, you are going to take the width of tier 2 and multiply that by 1.5, and the length is going to be the same as tier 2. So each layer is just the layer before times 1.5. Repeat the same process for tier 4, but add extra seam allowance for your hem. Once you cut out all of your tiers, you should have a bunch of long and small rectangles. So for my first tier, I have these 2 smaller equal sized rectangles. For my second tier, I have 2 slightly longer rectangles. And for my third tier, I have 3 evenly sized rectangles. And for my fourth tier, I have 4 long rectangles that are all the same size. So with all of my tiers, I can now begin sewing. Starting with my first tier, I'm going to cut out my elastic and I'm going to cut 1 inch less than my waist measurement, so 25 inches. Taking the 2 rectangles from my first tier, I'm going to place them right sides together and sew them along the side seams with a 1/4 inch straight stitch. I'm also going to serge the raw edges so that they don't fray. To create my elastic casing, I'm going to fold my fabric over at 1/4 inch and then a full inch, and I'm going to use my elastic to fold over to make sure that I'm making enough room, and I'm going to put a pin in as my guide for the rest of the waistband. Now that I've folded over my waistband, I'm going to take that to my sewing machine and sew right along the edge, making sure to leave a 1 inch gap to put my elastic through. I'm going to give my waistband a good press and then I'm going to insert my elastic using a safety pin. Once I pull my elastic through to the other side, I'm going to overlap the pieces by 1/2 inch and I'm going to sew a box X stitch, so basically a square along the top of the elastic. Once that's done, I'm going to tuck the elastic in and close up that little inch that we left open. With the first tier done, I'm going to take the 2 pieces from my second tier and sew those just like I did the first pieces along the side seams at 1/4 inch. Once I sew up the side seams and I have this long rectangle for my second tier, I begin doing basting stitches along the top of the fabric, and I break it into 4 sections. So I start from the side seams and stop in the center. I do another stitch starting at the center going to the next side seam, and I repeat that until all the top of the fabric has basting stitches. The reason why I break it up into 4 different stitches is because if you do one long continuous stitch, you have a chance of the stitches breaking or just the fabric gathering unevenly. So this is a much better technique. Now I'm going to take my first tier and divide the bottom into 4 sections, so the side seams and the center front and the center back. We are going to line that up right sides together with the second tier along the side seams and the center front and the center back. Once we do that, we're going to start gathering in between each of those points. Because we broke our basting stitch up into 4 sections, this should be easy because you can pull from either side of the section, and that will help you evenly disperse your gathers along the tier. Once all of my fabric is gathered evenly, I'm going to take that to my sewing machine and sew it at 1/2 inch with a straight stitch. And just a tip, when you're sewing, you want the gathered fabric to be on top so you can make sure that it is not shifting and bunching up in places that you don't want it to, and that it's being sewn evenly. Once that's done, I'm going to take it to my serger and finish off the raw edges. Once I finish off the first 2 tiers, I'm going to repeat that same process until I have my 3rd and my 4th tier attached. Once that's done, I can go ahead and sew up the hem, and for my hem, I fold my fabric over 1.5 inches so I can have a nice thick hem. I pin it in place, and I'm going to sew that with a straight stitch with my sewing machine. Once I sew my hem, I'm going to finish off my skirt by giving the hem a nice press. And that is the end of this tutorial for this beautiful flowy 4-tiered maxi skirt. If you have any questions, comment them down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next tutorial.